Welcome, everyone, to 41 is the mic. The first round of the NFL draft is concluded, and we are here to talk about the newest member of the Kansas City Chiefs, Xavier Worthy, what went on around the draft tonight, and what is ahead for the Chiefs on Friday night. I am Matt Derrick from Chiefs Digest, alongside first-round enthusiast Nick Jacobs. Nick?
I'm an all-round enthusiast, Matt, but I will accept first round for tonight.
I'll come up with a different enthusiast for Friday, but
don't worry, man. I know you got it. I know you got it.
We all have enthusiasm for the first round of the draft. It's the question is how long can you maintain that enthusiasm and keep it going all weekend?
Do you know the answer for me?
I know the answer for you. You were going to be fired up all the way through the undrafted free agents start rolling in. So
maybe.
Well, we did not have to wait till number 32, Nick. Mm-hmm. The Chiefs made a move. They struck while the iron was hot. Brett Veach had a guy circled that he wanted to go get and got his guy, jumping up to number 28, making a deal with all people, the Buffalo Bills. And the Bills still haven't selected. The Bills ended up trading out of the first round, so they got 32 back, and then they traded with the Carolina Panthers to get out of the first round. So we still don't know where Buffalo is going with their first pick of the 2024 draft. But I was going to ask that the Bills were the team that the Chiefs were able to make a deal with.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. A lot of people are assuming, and this is where I think I think this is where it's getting them. They're assuming the Bills wanted a receiver at that spot.
Right.
Like, I think that's the number one thing is people keep assuming they wanted a receiver at that spot. My thing is they clearly didn't want one of the corners that was still left. Otherwise, they stay there. And also, this is just me because I put it in my mock draft, the one I had to do that gets graded, and hopefully I got more. I think I got a couple more than last year. I know that. Last year I had one. I think this year's gonna be more than that. So I'll be curious to see because I got a lot of the positions right for the teams. It just wasn't exactly the right name. So like for the Bucks, I think I had Graham Barton maybe, and they ended up taking I don't know. No, I had Jackson Powers and they took Graham Barton. I think that's what that was. But anyways, yeah, the Bills I had taken Chop Robinson from Penn State because he would have been like the perfect speed rusher that the Bills need on that defense. And the reality of it is that people don't realize the Bills need defense a lot more than they need wide receiver. I don't think people realize that they need defensive line, pass rush help. They need linebacker help in depth. They need help at safety. They need help at corner. They need to get younger and faster, just like the Chiefs did their Super Bowl year ahead of the Eagles when they traded Tyreek Hill away. That's honestly what I think the Bills are actually trying to do when they traded Stephon Diggs away. I think they're trying to kind of copy part of what Brett Veach did, and I think that's actually what was part of what was happening tonight. Is I think the Bills are trying to get as many picks as possible that give them value, and I got a sneaky suspicion we're going to see O-line, D-line, linebacker, corner, and safety for the Bills with the picks that they started accumulating and the way that they moved around value-wise.
Yeah, I mean, and really when you look at it, because the Chiefs-Bills trades, the swapping of positions, the way that Brett Veach was coaching it's 38 positions, 38 spots in the draft that they had to exchange with the Bills in order to move up there. And for Brett Veach, it was an affordable price. So yeah, the Bills need talent, and they need affordable talent because they are up against the cap. I mean, they had to let go of a lot of guys. So, it's not just a matter of the Bills getting some cheap players. They need cheap, good players. Mm-hmm. So that's why they need, better draft picks and more of them. And that's what they were able to do tonight. Chiefs obviously managed to move up and get their guy. You like this pick, don't you, Nick?
I like his speed. Love his speed, actually.
I dare you to find a faster player, Nick.
Oh,
name a faster NFL player right now.
No, I can't. I can't.
You can't do it.
Not today or tomorrow. Yeah, no. The thing I'll say about Worthy is like the biggest things with him. Look, the Chiefs. You and I talked about this on the podcast all last year. They needed speed at wide receiver. And I think part of tonight was Brett Veach trying to correct not being able to get Zay Flowers last year in a trade up. And I think that's part of the reason he was willing to move up, even if it was the Bills. He was willing to move up because he wasn't going to let the Zay Flowers situation happen again like it did last year when they couldn't trade up for him. Allegedly. I was going to put allegedly out there, but yeah, a pretty good idea on that one. So I think this was kind of, it's like in Chappelle Show when they redo something that happened to somebody and they make it better. They give them a second chance to do it over again. I think it was on Chappelle Show, but it was on something where they give them a second chance. Oh no, it was Tosh 2.0 or whatever. That's what it was. It's Comedy Central, but in the same vicinity. But Tosh 2.0, yes, he did that to where he would give somebody it was a redemption segment. And so I feel like in some ways that's what the Chiefs were trying to do tonight, was to redeem the fact that he got Zay Flowers the year before. And the other part of it is with the Xavier Worthy, he becomes insurance for Marquise Brown. Now, and I'll get into the other part later when we look ahead towards day 2 of that thought. But I mean, with Worthy, what you're getting, like you talked about, you're getting 4.21 speed. You're getting back to in the ballpark of Tyreek Hill speed. It's going to be a matter of how quickly can he accelerate through stop-start, and how can he handle in the NFL at his weight, not his height, but at his weight. How can he bulk up to where he can protect himself when he takes a big hit and it doesn't hurt him as much as it could. And that's going to be a strong core section. That's going to be a strong quad area, because he's already got the speed and you don't want to take that away. I can tell you that much right now, but you do want to find that balance between the two. But yeah, him and Brown on the field together, you put them on 2 verticals, like Kelsey's going to have room over the middle. Rice is going to have room in the crosser. Whatever they end up doing with the other receiver positions, they're all going to have room to work under the middle if they need to, just for them physically being out there. Doesn't even mean that they're running the route, but this is them physically being out there. Teams are going to play off. You're going to see a bunch of cover 2, especially if they're on both sides. And like the Chiefs are going to get a lot more room to work. And then I'll get into the other piece of that puzzle on day 2 as well. I'm going to hold on right now. Call that a teaser.
Well, and the thing that the only concern I had, and we talked about this on the podcast before the draft, or a few episodes ago when we were talking about receivers. My only concern about Xavier Worthy is the size, because at 165 pounds, it's not the Big 12. He's going to be taking hits from bigger, faster, stronger guys than he's ever has before. And it's, can he pop up from those consistently? Chiefs feel that he can, because obviously they stressed the toughness tonight. That was really the first thing to describe him out of both the mouths of Andy Reid and Brett Veach. I had to go back and look at it, Nick. It's been... He weighs 165 pounds. It's been 40 years since a 165-pound receiver or smaller has gone for 1,000 yards in the NFL. There were only 2 that went over 200 yards in the NFL last year. Now, in the last 40 years, there's been 3 receivers at 170 pounds or less, and 3 of those have done it multiple times. 3 of those are incredible receivers. There's Drew Hill back with Houston in the 90s. There was Anthony Carter with Minnesota. He did it like 3 times in the 90s. And then Devontae Smith has done it the last couple of years with the Eagles. Those are quality receivers. So there's no doubt that, at that size, you can be a quality receiver. It's just, I think you're going to feel a lot better if, as when I asked Brett Veach about it, they get the nutritionist on him to, maybe bulk him up just a little bit, get him in the strength room to bulk him up a little bit, as Brett said, and don't turn him into a 200-pound guy. But, if he's able to play with 4.25 speed at 170, 172 pounds, I mean, that's going to make a difference. I mean, that is a difference in being able to pop up when, somebody like L'Jarius Sneed that you're now going to, maybe play against someday is popping you and surviving the hit. So, yeah, I mean, Andy Reid said that he wasn't really concerned about the weight issue, but Brett obviously acknowledged it. I mean, it's in their plans to try and make him a little bit bigger and, like you said, not take away from that speed. But I will say, I mean, talking to somebody in the front office at the end of the night, I mean, the words 2018, shades of 2018 were used. I mean, this is, the Chiefs feeling like they're getting some speed back into the offense, what they've been missing the last couple of years. And to your point, this is not about Rashee Rice's suspension or anything of that nature. It's about adding speed to this offense, but also acknowledging you only have Hollywood Brown right now for 1 year. He's got a 1 year deal. There's no guarantee that he's going to be back for a second year. So this is, Worthy of the guy you got under control for 5 seasons. If he's your replacement for Hollywood Brown in 2025, so be it. If you've got Hollywood around, then yeah, you can say you got the 2018 Chiefs.
Yeah, no, I mean you're not wrong about any of that part of it. It helps them, like I said, it does help them in twofold, because it does keep, you're not pressured to give, if Hollywood Brown has a massive year, you don't feel pressured to give him that to maintain that level of speed. But where you're really going to have to, I'll hold that part for day two part. But I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole. But here's what I'll say about Worthy. Like, when I watched him and we talked about him from a wide receiver perspective, also, Matt, he was a member of the big board, so that streak continues. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there's more than 160, 170 guys on the board each year, so you hopefully are getting one guy right. But I'm just saying, it's a streak that, you always want to continue. Because I know Terez was really proud of whenever he was doing his streak. He was always proud if the Chiefs at least drafted somebody from the all juice team. That meant a lot to him each year. And there was a couple times where he'd get nervous, and then we'd be texting, and he'd be like, dude, I don't know, man. I'm like, dude, you'll be fine. They'll get somebody. But I know he took a lot of pride in that. So, yeah. But that aside, just with Worthy, you're like, in the blink of an eye, he can get to 20 yards. He's going to frighten defenses with his speed. And that's what I'm saying. Like, teams are going to play off. Teams are going to play too deep a lot more. Or they're going to have to figure out ways to do press coverage against him and Brown so they never get started to begin with. But if you do that, you're leaving spots over top that Andy Reid's going to attack with the Rices and Kelce's of the world. So again, you're back to square one. So the Chiefs are trying to give themselves, and this is where I'm curious to see where this draft goes. But by making this first pick, it tells me that they are trying to get back to where they dictate what defenses have to do. And they are on the offensive. They are the ones aggressive. They're the ones attacking. And defenses are the ones that are going to have to react again. So I think that's really a big part of what the Chiefs did with this pick. And I also believe deep down, there were certain guys I was keeping tabs on whenever when the draft was going. I'm trying to find my app right there. Nailed it. I'm pulling up the board here real quick. But whenever the first benchmark that I was keeping tabs on was, where does Byron Murphy go? Went to the Seahawks, made complete sense. Seahawks crushed it. That's why John Schneider is who he is. Then when the Bengals took Mims, I'm like, okay, that is somebody that I have a hunch deep down the Chiefs probably had a first round grade on, probably would have been interested in. Then Jared Verse goes at 19 to the Rams, and potentially we'll see what he does at edge. Then when I saw Chop Robinson go 21, I'm like, okay, that would have been like an elite edge rusher that it would have been tough for the Chiefs to ignore if he falls to their lap. I was like, I would be curious to know what type of grade he had. Then Brian Johnson went at 23. I thought he would go at 17, and he didn't. And in my mock draft, I had Xavier Worthy going to the Bengals at 18. Because I'm like, I think they want to add a new dimension to the team and give themselves insurance against T. Higgins' contract. They didn't. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, we'll see if Worthy gets to the 49ers or because I still didn't think the Bills were going to make a play on him, because I think the Bills are trying to go after defense. But the team I was nervous about, that if they wanted him, I'm like, boy, I tell you what, the 49ers there at 31, I was like, they're probably the team that if the Chiefs can leapfrog them, They got a shot to get it done. And then when they took Ricky Parcell afterwards, I was like, yep, they took the next speed guy on the board. Because the 49ers are in a situation right now to where they don't know what is or isn't going to happen with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. So the problem they have, or they're having to figure out, is what the heck are we going to do at wide receiver? What do we do at wide receiver so we don't have to pay what Ayuk's asking for? And so that's just, that's, I hate to say it, but I've started to learn more and more, and this is why it's easier to kind of see these days, is you just got to follow the money. And when you start seeing where it is and what insurance policies do you have to create, that's where I see that coming out more and more these days.
Yeah, Brett Veach kind of alluded to trying to make a deal, and it certainly seemed like suggesting that offensive tackle was where to go. Two and two makes four. It certainly seems like Mims was the guy, because the only quote unquote tackle that went after that was Jordan Morgan going where he go 25 to the Packers. But we talked about it. He's going to be probably a guard, and the Chiefs certainly would have viewed him as a guard, because the arm length is a big deal for them. So that wouldn't have been a guy that they wanted. So I think it's pretty clear. I'm curious if, because you mentioned about the Bills needing defense, did Detroit do the Chiefs a favor by jumping in front of the Bills to get Darius Robinson from Missouri, and maybe eliminating another player that maybe the Bills might have considered? I mean, after that, Bills probably could have gone ahead and, if they still want to go defensive line, they've got their choice. Nobody else took a defensive lineman behind them. I think they felt pretty good that nobody was going to. So, maybe that was the case. I mean, if Darius Robinson was a player that they had on their board, maybe the Lions did the Chiefs a favor by making that deal, and made Buffalo a little bit more willing to make that trade. But it obviously worked out for the Chiefs. I mean, they certainly had Worthy circled at a certain spot. They weren't going to go a whole lot higher for him than that. It certainly sounds like they would have gone higher for a tackle. Maybe even if Joe Alt had slipped past 5, they might have considered that. I think if some other offensive linemen, those tackles at the top, had slipped a little bit further, maybe they would have considered it. But there's no doubt. I mean, this was I'm curious what you think about just the top of the draft, Nick, was starting out with 14 straight offensive players. It's like the NFL decided the defense doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, I think from a quarterback perspective, this class is always going to be interesting about how do the 6 quarterbacks do? How do they do? What type of careers does each one have? That's going to be the really interesting part. I'm bugged by the fact Joe Alt's gonna go play right tackle for the Chargers. I feel like that, and this isn't about him going to the Chargers. I'm gonna root for him to have a great career, but his potential earnings, I think that's personally bothers me, that like he's gonna play right tackle for at least a year, if not a couple years in his career, and not get to be at left tackle, really kind of build his skill set up, build his earnings up, so that if he did hit the open market in year 5 or year 6, that like he could really cash in. I don't know. I mean, that bummed me out when I saw he was going there. I was like, man, he's not going to be able to be a left tackle. They're going to have Slater be the left tackle. So I was like, okay, one of two things: either they're going to use Alt to replace Slater, but that'll be a couple years down the road, or they're genuinely going to make him the right tackle. But the thing you and I talked about multiple times on here is I knew they were going to go offensive line. Even if they traded back, they were going to go offensive line because they wanted some road graders. I had Latham to him because I thought Latham had more of the power that Harbaugh was going to try to go after. And personally, if they had been, part of me thinks, since the Vikings weren't willing to give up 2 first-rounders, I think that's what I genuinely believe that's what kept the Chargers in that spot. I think if the Vikings say, hey, we'll give you 11 and 23, I think they are willing to move down. Take somebody like Fashanu or Mims, who also kind of road grader fit their style, or even Fuaga, and then have that other spot to if they wanted to go get a guard that they could have, because I'm trying to find the guard that I'm looking at right now. I'm trying. Sorry. Oh, Troy, who went to the Steelers. Puata, I believe it is.
Yeah.
I like you get him and you get one of those tackles I mentioned. Like the Chargers have the line that can road grade people then.
And
So
that was one of the conversations, we were certainly having in the media workroom tonight while waiting for the Chiefs to draft, is like, okay, you're the Chargers. And there were rumors today that the Chargers were holding out because they wanted 3 ones from the Vikings, that they wanted their one next year too, in addition to 11 and 23, which was just absolutely comical. But had they, been able to work out something, I mean, even if they backed off that, certainly got 11 and 23, even maybe 11 and other picks. Think about this: if you're the Chargers, you get that, you're able to go back. I mean, it's hard to see this draft unfolding any other way. So had they gotten back to 11, okay, Joe Alt probably at that point does go to Tennessee. Now, okay, you can either take J.C. Latham, who's clearly the second best offensive tackle on the board, or you could take Mims, who is clearly the best right tackle on the board that you're going to play him at, and he's a natural right tackle as it is.
yeah.
You could have gotten you could have gotten more picks and still gotten probably your number 2 player. I mean, it just didn't make any sense that they decided to sit there. But now that we're into it, maybe Nick, we might as well just get into the rest of the NFL and the draft tonight.
Yeah.
You've got your burr about the Chargers and what they're going to do to Joe Alt.
Yeah.
My burr is what is Atlanta doing in the NFL? I mean, there are some folks there can you imagine? They've known, I mean, there's no okay. Everyone has known that Michael Penix was going to be available at 8 since January. I mean, there was no chance that he would not be available at 8. Frankly, there wasn't a whole lot of chance that he wouldn't be available probably in the second round when they picked.
Right.
But no, I get it. I mean, the way the 6 quarterbacks to go in the top 12, so maybe somebody would have taken him. But still, yet you wait until you're turning in the card, and then you turn around and say, wait a minute, we got this like $40 million quarterback that we signed. Hey, somebody go let him know that we're drafting a quarterback after we've just signed him to a 3-year guaranteed deal that he's not going anywhere. I mean, what in the world are they doing, Nick?
There's 2 names I'm gonna throw out here. Rich McKay, Barry Fountain. Go look their names up if you need to. But they seem to take a lot of pride in the fact that they kept Bill Belichick from coming down to Atlanta. I think Arthur Blank got his first taste tonight of the mistake he made. So I know. And did you see the interaction in the draft room during it?
Yes.
That was that. I mean, I'm not reading lips, but the way Arthur Blank's looking for an explanation on something, and the way that it's going, and see, here's the other problem. So you got a quarterback who's left-handed. You got a quarterback who's left-handed. You have a quarterback right now in Kirk Cousins who's right-handed. So you're gonna have to flip everything. Like it's gonna have, and the offense is gonna have to be flipped depending on which quarterback's in. So I mean,
and that's assuming that Penix can go into the game because he's not hurt.
Yeah, true. But I mean, look. I mean, Penix has one of the best arms in the draft. I totally get that. There's just a lot of other aspects to his game that I don't know. I mean, we'll see what Atlanta does. I mean, hey, if Arthur Smith thinks he's gonna turn him into this, well,
it doesn't matter what they turn him into. He's got he's going to be playing behind Kirk Cousins till he's 27, unless you're going to be paying your backup quarterback $50 million a year.
I'm just saying it's not ideal when the agent for Kirk Cousins, who's also Joe Tooney's agent, when the agent for Kirk Cousins has to come out and make a statement about the situation. Like you're off to a pretty bad start, and there ain't been a game played in September.
Well, as you know, we've discussed before in the pod, I have a philosophy that at any given moment in time, there are 8 teams in the NFL who do not know what they are doing.
You got a new power ranking now?
Atlanta has shot up to the top. I mean, they're there with a bullet, number one, and they might just get to stay there for a while. I mean, they're going to be hard to dislodge. I mean, this is such a bad pick, Nick, that I mean, I am now going to have to seriously consider any purchase that I ever make at Home Depot. That this is so bad. Because if Arthur Blank's running a team like this, then I got to worry about his other businesses too, because I've just got a lot of questions there, Nick. And when we get to questions, I have some questions about the AFC West.
Yeah.
Because not sure that the AFC West, I mean, Chargers, obviously we've discussed their question mark. We've been there and done that. Brock Bowers isn't a terrible pick for the Raiders. I mean, still needs a quarterback to throw him the football, but that's, I mean, and once again, I mean, there probably could have been, I mean, they could have had their pick of any of the best players at any position on defense that they wanted to try and stop the Chiefs if they wanted to, but there's that. But literally, I mean, that was my tweet for tonight about the Broncos. Sean Payton going to General Manager George Payton and Munster just said, George, get me any quarterback. And I can only assume that George Patton would have replied back to Sean, there aren't any quarterbacks left. And Sean Payton said, I don't care. That's how you end up with Bo Nix at number 12. Because you just don't care who your quarterback is. And maybe, I mean, Sean Payton's a good coach. Maybe he can turn him into something. But Bo Nix is also 24 years old, and his best years might be behind him, for crying out loud. I don't know. But that's another, I mean, the funny thing is that, like Dane Brugler does a great job with his draft guide. Mm-hmm. And I should bring up because I have a highlighted sheet that shows where, as everybody goes off, I highlight a player, off the board so I can kind of see where on Dane's, because he does such a great job with it. There's like these just 2 giant outliers. Almost everybody in Dane's top 30 went off the board. And then there's like this Bo Nix and Michael Penix just sitting out there by themselves as these huge outliers. It's like, I mean, I get how important the quarterback position is, but that's because you're supposed to take good quarterbacks. And if you can't get a good quarterback, my feeling is that you probably build the rest of your team and then you try and get your quarterback. You just don't waste a first round pick on a stiff.
Yeah, we're looking on the draft. Here's the part that I think it comes down to. I think Penix sent the Raiders in a tailspin, and that I don't think they recovered from it. I really don't. I think the Raiders thought Penix would be available when they got to him, and I think the Broncos were like, okay, if we don't take Bo Nix here. Because I personally think the Broncos are probably exploring trade situations, and I think they were probably looking to trade down and get Bo a little bit later and try to see if they can pick up a second rounder, because they don't have a second rounder. I think they were trying to see if they could get that done. And then when Penix went off the board at 8, they're like, okay, so it's now down to the musical chairs of JJ McCarthy and Bo Nix. We're cool with either one of them, and then.
And that's a problem. They shouldn't have been.
But when you're in a division with Patrick Mahomes, you gotta keep buying lottery tickets.
Oh, and that is in and of itself is like one of the crazier things that I've ever heard, because the narrative that Bo Nix belongs in the same conversation, that Sean Payton feels just as good about Bo Nix as he did about Patrick Mahomes. I mean, no. I mean, I hate to quote Judge Judy, Nick, but don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining. There is absolutely no way that Sean Payton feels as good about Bo Nix as he does about Patrick Mahomes, and did about Patrick Mahomes coming out of the draft, rather.
Well, sometimes you got to sell
I
tickets,
mean,
man.
I am calling that bet any day out of the year.
Sometimes you got to
And,
sell tickets.
and I am guaranteeing you that when Sean Payton turns over his cards, he's going to have a busted straight draw. He's got no hand whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm where I'm stunned. Not necessarily stunned, but like I'm curious to see how Brock Bowers works out with the Raiders. That's what I'm really curious to see. Because I mean, don't get me wrong, Brock Bowers is a talented tight end, and I have no issue with that. But I mean, it's going to be a couple years before he gets a good quarterback throwing to him. So
Well, I mean, Aiden O'Connell, a little 12 personnel with Michael Mayer. I mean, they're just going to run tight ends all day. And I
yeah, and
mean,
that was the other thing that surprised me. I'm like, you already had Mayer. Like, I mean, I know as a previous regime drafted him technically, but I'm like, that okay. So you got my hair Mayer and Bowers now. I was like, oh, okay, I guess. But when Byron Murphy's on the board right there, you have a chance to go get a really quality three tech who you can either rotate in with Wilkins or try to figure out ways to play them together. Since you play this tough dog physical defense or whatever you said on the YouTube clip, how you get this magic potion to beat Patrick Mahomes, um, and then you got Mims there and you got other offensive tackles that you need for your O line. I don't know. It was I was like, all right, oh, Raiders are still Raider and Broncos are still Broncoing. And the Chargers were really look. I may be frustrated with the path for Joe Alt, but it's still a good pick for the Chargers, and it's still a
sure.
competent pick.
Yes.
So, like, I'm curious to see how the Chargers put together on their whole draft, but I got a feeling it's going to be pretty competent around the board, and I don't think it's going to be the case for the Raiders personally.
No, it's not heading in the right direction. And and I mean, I had a little bit of quibble with the Vikings flipping spots with the Jets because it's not like the Jets were going to take JJ McCarthy, but I can only assume that was the Vikings paying a Broncos Raiders tax of, hey, Jets, we'll send you a fifth just as long as you don't trade this pick to the Broncos or the Raiders.
Yeah.
Because they definitely wanted to get McCarthy. I mean, and you know what? The Vikings, I feel pretty good. I mean, even if I'm not the world's biggest believer in JJ McCarthy, although he should be set up for success, and if he's going to be a good player because of the talent that they've got on that offense there in Minnesota, but they got Dallas Turner too. Later on. I mean, yeah, they had 2 first-round picks, but they did a decent job with their 2 first-round picks, I thought.
Yes. That's all I got on that one.
Well, was there anything else as far as going around the NFL tonight, Nick, that stood out to you or anything that good or bad?
Well, I thought I'll just go through it pretty quick. We've already kind of gone through the top 10 for the most part and everything. And I'll go into I was surprised the Rams took Jared Verse. But that also, I don't know, because I was kind of curious if they would go with Chop Robinson. But then the Eagles went and got Mitchell, and the Lions, boy, they could not get up there fast enough to be able to take Arnold off the board and get themselves what they probably consider a really quality corner and get that part done. And then, yeah, I mean, and for the Ravens to get Nate Wiggins where they did, that's why the Ravens are the Ravens, man.
Not that them and the Eagles too. What kind of rabbit's foot does Howie Roseman have to just all of a sudden wake up on the draft pick and say, "Oh, wait a minute, the best corner on the board is there available, and for me at 22, oh, fantastic."
I genuinely wonder who all he called around to potentially hypothetically trade up, just even if it was a smokescreen, just to get some teams thinking and just to get some teams because here's the other part of the gamesmanship, and this is why I would love to be in some draft rooms when things are going on, just to watch how people handle themselves and panic and all that type of stuff. Is some of those teams that call, are they just messing with certain teams and manipulate like who and get in their head to where they're debating who are they trying to trade up for, who might they go get, and then they spend 20 minutes of their day hypothetically going over that situation and instead of using it on something else to and so it's kind of like whenever Andy Reid puts a play out there that teams are going to spend a week on. It's the same type of thing, except it's just multiple teams in draft rooms who maybe have no intention of trading up at all, but it's just kind of fun for them to do. But yeah, at the end of the day, man, I still can't believe the Bills traded with the Chiefs again. I thought after Mahomes and what had happened the past handful of years that wasn't going to happen again, and then it happened, and I'm like, that'll be an interesting storyline for a couple of years, depending on whichever way it goes.
Yeah, I was absolutely stunned that the Bills and the Chiefs made a trade because I figured that was definitely one that if you're the Bills, I mean, it's just you just don't even want to take a chance because anytime that you get around the Chiefs and a trade in the first round, it just doesn't seem to go your direction. But
No.
they decided to risk it. You know, so now we're looking forward to a Friday night that looks like it will be a little quieter in Chiefs Kingdom. Chiefs still have number 64. They have traded number 95. That's what went to the Bills. And so they get a fourth round back. They're not going to have a number 133 in the fourth round instead of 95s. That was the 38 spots that Brett Veach was willing to give up for Xavier Worthy. Then they also swapped positions in the seventh. So assuming that the Chiefs don't find a way to finagle their way back into the third round, and they could. But although 133 to 95 was the last pick in the third round anyway. I mean, that would be a pretty big jump to me to make it back. So, what do you Chiefs with if they only have one pick on Friday night, Nick? Who is that one pick?
That is the question I'm very intrigued by. And the reason I say that is because what I'm really interested to see is what do they try to go get an offensive tackle to at minimum at least compete? Do they try to get another receiver? Is there a running back they want? Is there something on the D line or interior or D tackle? That's kind of where I'm interested to see which road they go down now with that part of it, because there's a certain amount of because the other part of it is right now is there speed that you want to go get at running back, and is that going to be somebody like Jonathan Brooks from Texas, who if you're going to do that, you're going to need to do it tomorrow, and you're also going to need to be able to make yourself flexible enough to jump up in front of Dallas if they take them, because there's a strong chance Dallas may take him tomorrow at 56. And the Chiefs are at 64. So there may be a chance you need to move up in front of Dallas, and the highest the two targets you're going to have to do that with, while I got the board in front of me, is going to be Philly at 53 and the Rams at 52. So if you do that, then the question becomes, do you want to give up one of those fourth rounders to try to make that happen and jump up and try to jump up to that point? Do you give up one of those fourth and fifth rounders to get yourself to that? Or do you want to give up one of those thirds in 2025 to do that? Or do you want to keep those two third round picks in 2025 and try to use that to negotiate with somebody that has duplicate picks in the third round? That's kind of the thing you're wrestling with at that point in my opinion. Is there somebody that you can try to work that out with to get that done?
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing, is that if you are the Chiefs, I mean now with the way that trading down to 133 there, a fourth round tackle there at that spot, I'm not certain. I mean, as deep as this group is this year, I'm not certain that there's anybody there that you would say is going to be somebody who's really going to threaten Wanye Morris. And but at this point, I mean, unless the Chiefs were to make a really aggressive move up from 64 to get a tackle, I mean, what's the most likely outcome? I mean, I think at this point, you're talking about re-signing Donovan Smith. And if Donovan Smith and Wanye Morris are competing for the left tackle job, that's all the Chiefs really need. Is all they want. I mean, I think that would be all that they need. So if Monday they're signing Donovan Smith, I think they've obviously fixed that. And if Wanye Morris is able to beat out Donovan Smith for the left tackle job, I mean, even more the better. I mean, that's the one thing that they really just want, is that, and they have been searching, at least wanting to put into that competition, is just to make sure that there's somebody there to give Wanye kind of the carrot to chase. They want him to work for it and have to fight for it and not just be handed a starting job. So if it's Donovan Smith, and if Donovan Smith wins the job and is better, then so be it. But it's really curious to me, because I'm with you now. if the Chiefs really want to go for speed and they really want to put the 2018 offense back into position, I mean, they took one step with Worthy tonight. And as nice of a back as Isaiah Pacheco is, he has not got the speed and the explosion that Kareem Hunt had. And not a lot of guys do. So if you need two running backs to equal one Kareem Hunt, well, it's probably the way to do it. But Jonathan Brooks would be one of those guys potentially. So I wouldn't fight against it if I mean, now he is coming off the injury, didn't run the 40, so that's the one, test that nobody has on him. But obviously you got the tape, and the tape says that he is a really good player.
Yeah, when I'm looking at the board here right now, these are the guys I'm keeping tabs on for day 2. Lad McConkey, what happens there? Jalen Polk, what happens there? Troy Franklin, what happens there? Javon Baker, what happens in that situation?
Where's still a lot of really good receivers out there.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, you could really, depending on how that board goes here in the second round, you have an opportunity. And then Malik Washington, what ends up happening with somebody like Malik's talents? Because Malik gives you another member that gives you that Legion of Zoom vibe, if that's what you're after. Because if you're looking for insurance policies, I feel like Baker gives you somewhat in the ballpark of Rice from a size perspective. Lad McConkey gives you just another element of reliability in that offense if you went down that road. Running back wise, Jonathan Brooks, is just a matter of if you can leapfrog the Cowboys, I believe. There might be somebody else I'm not even thinking of right now that does that. And then I'll be curious to see where Austin Booker ends up. Then Mason Smith, I'm very intrigued to see with the Chiefs not having a third round pick where they end up going in that front. And then if there, like we talked about from an offensive tackle perspective, are the Chiefs still interested in Kingsley? Are they interested in Patrick Paul, Roger Rosengardner, Gary, Amagaji, Blake Fisher? Those are all quality tackles that are going to be available for the Chiefs to potentially be able to get. And then there's a lot of the rest of kind of what I'm intrigued by, they can get in the fourth round at that point. So those are kind of the bigger names that I'm personally going to be keeping tabs on for that night. And then obviously Marshawn Nealon, where does he go? Because I mean the top 4 DNs that I had on this board, they're gone. So that's Austin Booker and Nealon. I'm very intrigued where those two guys are going to end up.
Yeah, and I think the general consensus would probably say that Nealon is the best defensive end left on the board. So I mean, is that where? I mean, could the Bills go that direction, starting off Friday night in the second round? Now they got the first pick on Friday night, possibly. I mean, the wide receiver position is still stacked. I mean, there might be 18 more receivers that go in the next 3 rounds. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is a loaded group. So yeah, I'm curious to see where all those receivers do go. If the run on tackles does continue, that is intriguing to me because, I mean, and there's a lot of variance in this next group. I mean, because there will be some people who tell you, I mean, I'm looking at ESPN's board right now. I mean, there will be some that will tell you right now that Patrick Paul is the best offensive tackle remaining on the board, and he's 10th on ESPN's board. Right. So, that just tells you just how much variance there is. I mean, I think there's some decent players in there, but there's not a universal agreement about that tackle group and how it stacks up. Whereas I think that there is universal agreement that, there's a lot of good receivers that are still out there. Would you, we're talking about it. I mean, I think that there's enough outcry now just because of the running back position that had the Chiefs taken a running back in the first round, I think that the Chiefs kingdom would probably have melted down most of the city by now. But would you have any problems with them doing it in the second round?
Not for Jonathan Brooks. Because I mean, when they brought him in for the official visit and probably looked at the ACL to see where it's at and did the medical part of it, if they're good with it, then that's all that matters. And that does give them somebody that's kind of more in the Jamal Charles realm that I've always been curious to see paired with Patrick Mahomes. And you pair that with Xavier Worthy, and those two were teammates before, so that's not a bad thing. But I mean, look, I'm not going to be upset because whatever the here was the thing that would have bummed me out a little bit tonight. If the Chiefs had taken a corner with what Dave Merritt, with having a coach like Dave Merritt, I understand, like, hey, if there's great value, I totally get it. So, but I'm like, man, unless it's Mitchell Falling. If it's Mitchell Falling, like, I understand it, but I don't know. The fact that they got speed at receiver and there's still a lot of wide receivers left that they need, that there's the quality running back still on the board, and a handful of other things that they could use additions to their offense. Like, I don't know. I'm intrigued to see where they're going to go on those fronts. And here's another thing I want to say. So somebody asked me tonight that, well, they said on my board, well, you had a second round grade on Xavier Worthy, so the Chiefs reached. No. Like Michael Lombardi said in our interview that they clearly didn't listen to earlier this week, and he brought up the great point. Like when Brett Veach told us they had 16 to 18 first round grades, that means there's 32 picks. So like half of that board is going to be what they would consider second round. So if they don't see certain value in that, they're not going to just force a lot of it.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. And then like something he said that really stuck out, that continued to stick with me through draft night. When you asked him the question, he's talking about like the horizontal chart and everything. And what he was saying is, you're not going to get those lock sure first round starters is where the Chiefs pick at. So you're looking to get guys who maybe have a couple weaknesses here or there, and you're drafting them to put them in spots to where they can become those starters with good coaching. So, like, I mean, that's kind of the Chiefs system overall. And so somebody like Worthy is somebody they're probably going to have to coach up physically and get him to a certain level strength training wise so he can be able to stay in the NFL. But that guy's double moves, his stop start, the way he can cut on a dime and explode out of it, the way that I saw Alabama have to double team him with high lows in that game when I was watching his coach's film, those don't happen if they don't respect your speed and they don't respect you can take it the distance. So that's why it was somebody like Jonathan Brooks from Texas, he can take it the distance as a running back. Like you add that in the backfield with him and Pacheco, or or the Chiefs add another receiver that can create some fear, or if they add a tackle. Like those are kind of the three ballparks that I'm personally looking at right now. And I'm like, I'm going to be happy with whatever they do among that bunch. But I do know from a size perspective, they're going to, at wide receiver, it's going to get a little tougher to get size if you're not able to get somebody like Javon Baker. Maybe, I mean, yeah, so we'll see. That'll be, I don't know. I'm intrigued to see how the board shakes out here over the next handful of days.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see. And we'll see if Brett Veach decides to make another move on Friday night to jump up from 64. Right now, it's the only pick he's got. Maybe he moves back and picks up more capital. I do find it interesting, Nick, that Brett's now put himself into a spot when he says that there's not a lot of depth in this draft in the third day of the draft, and now he's got 5 picks on the third day. I do kind of wonder if he will try to be a little bit more active tomorrow night. And like you said, moving up from 64 would make a ton of sense because, and let's go back to what you made a great point of, which is that, we've been telling you, yes, you got 16 to 18 players that you got a first round grade on. Most teams will probably only have about maybe 30 to 40 players that they have a second round grade on. So you're picking at 64, you're getting a player that you got a third round grade on. And so, yeah, I mean, with Xavier Worthy, you got a player that you had a second round grade on. Frankly, I mean, that's the way that Chiefs fans probably should have looked at Felix Anudike-Uzomah last year. The expectation was, and the criticism is, hey, he's a first round pick. He should be playing. He should be producing, doing all this stuff. No, he was a second round pick, essentially, because that's what he was. He's a second round grade that got picked in the first round because all the other first round picks that they had in first round grades were gone. So, and Worthy's in a different position because he's not coming in with an injury of any sort. He's coming in with an opportunity to should play. He is going to be a returner as well. So I would imagine he's going to be the kick and punt returner. We will see. I think we're going to have a lot of fun over the next few months breaking down this wide receiver room now because the cut line is going to be interesting. About who does make this room, how many receivers to keep, the Chiefs keep. We're going to have kind of a similar conversation as we did last year, except I think it's going to be a lot more fun because this room's better, Nick.
Yeah, and then the thing I'm curious about is say the Chiefs go out and get another wide receiver in the draft. Does that mean that Tyler Boyd they're not going to sign, or they're still going to bring him in? Because if they bring him in, then that's when things get really concerning for a Sky Moore or Kadarius Toney at that point, in my book.
Yeah,
So
I mean, if the Chiefs had another receiver in the draft, it's going to make it very interesting for a couple of veterans in that room. I mean, it's going to be step up your game or step out, step off.
Right.
So we will find out. Anything else on your mind, Nick, after the first round tonight?
No, I mean, I'm not upset about the pick. I mean, there's things that they'll have to work on with him, but the Chiefs have been able to win multiple Super Bowls. So, I mean, at some point, you just got to let them work, man. You know, you just got to go out there and let them work. And then I'll say I am another guy I'm going to be curious about is Kansas's Dominic.
Cooney?
Yeah, where he ends up going.
Yeah. As a Mizzou guy, I'm going to be interested to see where Ennis Rakestraw. He should be, I think, an early second-round guy. And it was nice getting a Mizzou guy in the first round tonight, and Darius Robinson in his hometown in Detroit. That was pretty cool. It would have been cooler if he'd went to the Lions, but or the Chiefs. I wouldn't have minded that. But good player. I think he's going to have a good career. We'll see what happens there. But it's a lot of fun in the first round, a very interesting first round tonight. I don't think that we'll probably see 14 offensive players in a row on Friday, but maybe we'll see 14 defensive players in a row, Nick. I mean, there's still a lot of good defensive players out there now that have been left on the table. So we'll see if the NFL on Friday night realizes that defense does still exist. So
I think they will. We'll see if the Chiefs can trade with the Bills in the third round or not.
Yeah, and I mean, it might be. I mean, it might be kind of a quiet night because if the Chiefs do have only one pick, the only people we're going to hear from will be that pick and Mike Borgonzi, assistant general manager, who's going to be talking to us after the draft. So, might not be the busiest of Friday nights, but we'll bring you all the coverage. You've got, I know your draft shows over on KSHB 41.
Yeah, on the clock Friday at 6:30 on KSHB 41, and then we'll have a streaming show that'll be after 10:35.
There you go, and we will be back here Friday night / Saturday morning, I suppose, with the recap of the first, that's the second and third rounds.
Yep.
So you will find that on your feed, both on the 41 is the Mike podcast, as well as the Chiefs Digest YouTube page. And we will just keep on keeping on with the draft throughout the weekend.
Yep. Hopefully we won't have any terrible weather Friday night. That'll be interesting.
Yes, let's all cross our fingers on that. And man, did Kansas City luck out with the draft last year, because 2 years ago there was terrible weather in Kansas City for the draft. This year there's been terrible weather for the draft. Last year it was absolutely Chamber of Commerce perfect all week.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't ask for a better than that. So, well, with that, we will see you all after the second and third rounds on Friday night.
And until next time, I bid you adieu.